Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these topics that are appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Before moving to the first article, try to answer this question. Just pause the video and try to answer this question. You will get this answer in the end of the video. Now consider the following statements. The Governor of Reserve Bank of India is appointed by the central government. This is the first statement. Second statement says certain provisions in the Constitution of India give the central government the right to issue directions. Next, the governor of the RBI draws his power from the RBI Act. Which of the above statements are correct? Now answer by yourself. Now coming to the first article. Of the day. Now this article is saying that in energy dependent world, the issue of food security. Now what is the context of the news? Now this article is saying that energy security and food security both are interlinked, intertwined and interdependent. For example, this article is saying that because of the global political instability, there is supply chain disruptions. For example, due to Russia-Ukraine war, there is supply chain disruptions regarding the supply of fertilizers because Ukraine is one of the major exporter of fertilizers. For example, India itself imports DAP fertilizers of 60% of its DAP requirements. So if at all there is supply chain disruption of fertilizers like DAP, there is disruption in food production, right? Hence, there is a lot of dependency on the global energy security and food security. Okay. Now, this is the context of the news. Now, this article is important from the examination perspective. Now, if you see previous year question, just in 2023 mains examination, it was asked that discuss the consequences of climate change on the food security in tropical countries 2023. Okay, it is asking that the relation between the food security and climate change. Likewise, this article is also saying that energy and food security. So in this way, these both are important. And the points mentioned in this article, you can use them in the mains examination so that they can add value to your answer. Right now, this article is saying that agriculture is energy intensive. Why it is being saying like that? Because agriculture consumes 70% of water resources. Now, in India itself, 90% of the groundwater is taken for the irrigation, right? Agriculture is responsible for 20% of greenhouse gases. How it is possible? Yes, it is possible in multiple ways. For example, you know that in agriculture, we use mechanization like, tractors and things like that. They will limit greenhouse gases, right? We use fertilizers. To produce fertilizers, we need natural gas. Hence, fertilizers production is a lot of energy intensive, right? Another one is we use majorly tillage, right? We used to till the soil. By tilling the soil, soil will release the carbon, right? Even in the transportation of goods of the food produced, again it leads to greenhouse gases. Even in the storage, like for example, let's say you are using cold storage for the perishable goods. Now cold storage, to increase the cooling and all, we need electricity. Now where is electricity coming from? Again from the coal. No, all these things are the energy intensive. Now inputs, you can say inputs such as water. Now, water is again energy consuming because we use diesel and all, especially for the motors, right, to extract the water. Hence, in this way, agriculture is energy intensive. So if there is energy disruption that has happened at the global level, though this affects the food security also, right? Now, for example, let's say there is a disruption of fertilizer. Now, this may lead to increase in the prices of the food, right? Now, hence, in this way, what this article is saying that the world over, the governments are working in silos. That means they are thinking of food security to address the issue of food security separately and to address the issue of energy security separately. But it is to be understood that they both are interdependent and interlinked. This is what very important to understand. That's why it is said that agriculture is also carbon intensive and energy dependent. Now, this is further difficult for the low income countries. Now, it is being said that because of the disruptions and lack of proper trade connectivity and economic integration in the African countries, there is less supply of per capita fertilizer, hence there is less productivity in Africa. Now it is being said the population is increasing. For example, India itself has around 18% of the global population, presently most populated, and Africa's population is continuously increasing. Hence, the pressure of the population is continuously increasing, and there is a pressure of urbanization on the land. Now, in this context, the food security is increasingly becoming challenge. Now, this energy insecurity is further adding to this because of the global disruptions and things like that. Okay, this is what mentioned in this article. Now, this article is saying that this lead to energy poverty. Now, remember this keyword, energy poverty is a keyword that you can use in your answer. This indicates a value addition in your answers, right? Why it is called energy poverty? Because certain countries cannot address these issues because they want to address the issues of the welfare. Because to address the issues of this, they need to transition into renewable energy. But transitioning into renewable energy is very costly affair. It requires a lot of technology, research and development. But already developing countries are not that have income. right? They have welfare obligation and things like that. But the presently, the developed countries are also not committing to its targets of investing renewable energy projects in developing countries and things like that. They are not abiding to the common but differentiated responsibilities. They are not abiding to the goal of climate finance and things like that. And along with this, there are a lot of disruptions are happening. Global supply chain disruptions are happening. Interdependence is there a lot of and things like that. Okay, hence energy poverty will perpetuate the poverty of the people, because if there is any disruption, if the increase in the prices, and there is increase in the prices, it is the small and marginal farmers that are most affected, right? Hence, in this way, it is been said that energy poverty aggravate the poverty of economic poverty. Now, this is what the saying in this article. Hence, energy poverty and food security need to be addressed in an integrated and cooperated and coordinated manner. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. Okay. Now, just remember from certain facts that you can use in the examination. These two are very important, right? Now, agriculture is responsible for 20% of the greenhouse gases. Now, majorly agriculture emits, that it is ammonia, right? Now, that is one other thing. 70% of the global freshwater resources is being consumed by the agriculture. Now, these are the facts you can add directly in your answer, which adds value, right? Now, India imports 60% of its DAP fertilizers. Now, fertilizer is one of the repeated theme in the both prelims, right? In prelims, we asked that whether India is sufficient. For example, previously it also said that India is sufficient in coal; it does not import anything and things like that. Likewise, it can ask about fertilizers also. Remember that India is importing 60% of its DAP fertilizers. It is important from the prelims perspective, right? Now, you have to remember these things. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that India used 114 milligrams of antibiotics for every kg of meat in 2020. Now, the context of the news is that this news is about antibiotics usage by the animals and humans. Okay, you know that you may have heard about the things like diclofenac. Because of the increasing use of diclofenac in the cattle. Now, after death of the cattle, when this scavengers eaten by the vultures are suffocating to death, like that. There is instances are happening. Now it is because of this antibiotics like diclofenac is being used. Now I think it was banned that time. Now things like that are happening. Now why this article is important? Now this article is important from the context of livestock rearing, because livestock rearing is considered as secondary agriculture in India. Now it is important especially from the secondary income of farmers. Now in previously mains examination, livestock is clearly given in the syllabus of JS paper 3, and not only that, multiple questions are being asked. For example, if you see this question, livestock rearing has been a big potential for providing non-farm employment and income in the rural areas. Discuss suggesting suitable measures to promote this sector in India. Now, this is previously question asked. Now, what is this article is saying? Now, this article is saying that generally we use antibiotics, to treat the issues of bacterial infections and things like that. Okay, both antibiotics are used, can be used by the humans and animals, right? Both humans use and animals are used. Now, this article is saying that antibiotics are more used in the animals than humans. Now, what happens when there is a repeated use of these antibiotics for particular type of diseases? Over the time, this bacteria develops resistance. Now, this is what this article is saying. This is what we often talk about, is antimicrobial resistance and things like that. Okay. Now, this is what happened. Now, what happened because of this? This lead to the often zoonotic diseases and things like that. It lead to the death of the cattle, decrease in the productivity. Even this lead to diseases in the humans also, because humans consume this livestock. For example, we used to consume this chicken, poultry, pig and things like that. So it will transfer to humans also. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. And this article also mentioned that India is 30th ranking in terms of the antibiotics usage in India. Now, it depends on the countries. Now, this antibiotic resistance is being developed, it is depends on the countries that how much it is there in country. Because it is being said that in certain countries, especially low income countries, in countries like Africa, there is less availability of these antibiotics, and they are using less. It is not because of their awareness. Now, that is what mentioned in this article. Now, the major reason for occurring this antibiotic or the bacterial infections is that ill maintenance of this poultry. For example, you know that we need clean environment in maintenance of, for example, buffalo. Proper ventilation for poultry and all these things, right? If there is no things like that, for short-term usage, people use this antibiotics and things like that. No, this article also mentioned that to reduce the use of antibiotics, we need to address these basic issues of services such as clean environment, maintaining the hygiene, clear water. Many of time you may have seen that often cattle, buffalo cows and all these things drink polluted water and things like that. Things like that are happening. So we need to provide a clear environment for these to reduce the usage of antibiotics, right? Another important issue mentioned in this article was First of all, we have to use antibiotics to treat the bacterial infections. But on the contrary, on the paradoxically, it is being said that antibiotics are using for increasing productivity. For example, you know that we used to use in generally in the poultry farms to ensure that the chickens or the hens, should increase their size by at least by just 20 or 10 days, right, to develop the meat and all these things. So we are increasing for productivity. Now this is against the natural form of evolution of animals. This is what mentioned in this article, and this lead to the diseases and all. Now this is what mentioned in this article, but because of these issues, we cannot completely avoid the antibiotics. That is what mentioned in this article, because bacterial infections are very much dangerous. To protect ourselves and also the animals such as livestock, we need to use antibiotics. That is inevitable, right? That is what mentioned in this article. Okay, now what we need to do is that we need to balance based on the awareness. So this is what mentioned in this article. Now you can use this data of 114 milligrams of antibiotics for every kg of meat, as a data. Now you can say that development of these antibiotics is one of the challenges in the livestock rearing question. Okay, and using for treating bacteria and productivity is also you can use in the examination, okay, as a data, so that it can add value to your answer. Okay, now we'll move to the next question. Next article. Now this article is saying that approach election commission to enact POSH Act in political parties, said by the Supreme Court. Now why this article is in the news? Recently an appeal was filed in the Supreme Court that to address the issue of POSH Act in political parties. Now it is being said that we need to apply POSH Act, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace Act, in the political parties also. Now this is what the petition. Now what court is said? The court said that, see, the jurisdiction of the political parties is with the election commission. First go to election commission, it will address the issue. Now this is what said by the Supreme Court. Now in this context, we will discuss certain important provisions regarding the POSH Act and why it is relevant. Now if you see the previous year question in GS4, it is clearly asked that we are witnessing increasing instances of sexual violence against women in the country. So despite existing legal provisions, now this POSH Act is one of the legal provisions, right? The number of such instances is continues on rising. So suggest some innovative measures to tackle this measures. Now this was asked in GS paper 4. Now in GS paper 1 also, issues related to the women is one of the important issue, right? Now constitutionalization of gender problems by the Supreme Court is again one of the questions that was asked in GS paper 2. Now, in this context, knowing certain provisions of the POSH Act is very important, especially things like that are happening and asking in GS for case studies also, right? So, knowing certain provisions of this POSH Act is very important. Now, we will discuss certain POSH Act. Now, you know that in 1992, Supreme Court provided Vishaka guidelines because of the issue happened that a gang rape was happened with a social worker in a workplace. Now, in the context of this, Supreme Court provided that there is law or no legal framework to provide safe working environment for women. In that context, court provided certain guidelines to regulate the working environment, especially to enforce the working safeguards for women. Now, in this context, we got the Vishaka guidelines. Now, the manifestation of this Vishaka guidelines is the legal framework, that is POSH Act 2013. Now, this is a legal framework to address the issues of the sexual harassment at workplace. Now, it has a complaint mechanism and grievance redressal and things like that. We will see certain provisions. So, as per this act, the definition of sexual harassment is the act defines sexual harassment as any unwelcoming physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual contact, sexual advances, request for sexual favors, making sexual comments, and showing pornography. Okay, this is the definition given. So you can use them in the case studies and things like that. Okay, and next, certain aspects that you can use in the prelims examination if at all any asks. The act applies to all women employees in both public and private sectors. Remember this point that it applies both public and private sector organizations. Another important thing is it applies both organized and unorganized sectors. Okay, these are the things you have to remember. Next, as per this act, we need to compulsorily set up an internal complaints committee in the workplace. If that workplace is having 10 or more workers, that means it is nothing but formal establishments, right, or organized sectors. Now, what happened if there is less than 10 workers? That means unorganized sectors, and in that also this POSH Act applies. What happened? But as per this act, we need to have a district nodal officer, right? A district nodal officer to implement this act. So, if any workplace having less than 10 workers, but there is a sexual harassment incident happening, so complaint can be raised to this level. because district level there is a local area committee. So here the issue is adjudicated. Now next, as per this act, a written complaint has to file to the internal complaints committee within the 3 to 6 months of the incident happen. Okay, remember this point. And ICC can forward the complaint to the police or start an inquiry that must be completed in 90 days. Now this is the process, and as just I said, now that there must be an officer in every district at the local complaints committee, right? Now another important thing that you have to remember is that ICC has to be headed by a woman. Now ICC has a power similar to the civil court. Now, these are the things that are you have to remember from the examination perspective. Now, in this context, this article mentioned that we need internal complaints committee in the political parties also, because you know that recently in Karnataka there is an issue happened of sexual allegations and pornographic videos that are unearthed, right? The investigation is presently going on. Things like that are happening at the political parties also, because of political leaders are very much influential in nature that things are not coming out. In that context, this article is saying that we need internal complaints committee at the political parties level also, because this encourages women into the political leadership, right? Now, another important thing is that having a proper implementation of this POSH Act is very important to encourage women into the workforce. That English, labor force participation of women, because safe working environment means women are encouraged to work and things like that. Okay, there are certain issues in this, provisions of this POSH Act. Now, the limitations of POSH Act are, now it lacks gender neutrality, because often we are seeing that there are false cases against women, false rape accusation and things like that. So not this act is not applicable to the men victims. Hence, this lacks gender neutrality. Another important thing is not appointing district officers. In certain states, it is found that there are many districts in which there is a lack of district nodal officers to implement this POSH Act. Another important thing is fear of retaliation for women. Hence, because of which they are underreported. Because often it is being said that women are of subordinate positions. They cannot complain against the superiors. Another important thing is unorganized workplace. Now, 80% of the women are working in the unorganized sectors. So hence there is lack of proper structural, hierarchy, to complain to the superiors. Another thing is economic dependency. Because of the poverty of the women, they cannot complain or report the incidents, because they are in dependence on the employment, especially on the superiors or the employers, because they often think that because of the influence, they can't get this work in some other places also. Another important thing is sexual issues are often linked with the social honor. That's why you often see that people won't say or won't discuss about the sexual harassments in the outer place. Now it is being said that it is the against the social respect or social honor of the family, right? Hence, if at all any incident happen, often it discourages women to work from the family side. Now another thing is that delayed legal and procedural complexities, because of which often women are silent in nature, don't report the things. And these are the challenges that need to be addressed in the future to ensure the effective implementation of the POSH Act and ensure that there is safe working environment and encourages women in the work, labor force participation and things like that. Okay. Now we will move to the next article. Now this article is saying that opposition to move notice to remove the vice president. Now this is the context of the news. We don't go into the political controversy and all that, but we will see the appointment process and removal procedure of the vice president. Now, why this article is important? Yes, this article is important, especially if you see the previous year questions of prelims. Vice president was asked, and president was also asked year after year, right? Now, hence, president and vice president are very important from the examination perspective. Now, in this article, we will understand the prelims perspective, especially the removal process of the vice president, right? If we see the previous year question, it was asked the chairman and deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha are not the members of that house. Now, this is a wrong statement. See, chairman may not be the member of that house, but deputy chairman is the member, right? No, hence this is a wrong statement. First one, the first statement is a wrong. Next, while the nominated members of the two houses of the parliament have no voting rights in the presidential election, they have the right to vote in the election of the vice president. Yes, this statement is true. The answer is only two. Now we will see from the prelims perspective certain aspects regarding the removal of the vice president. Okay. Now we'll see what are the provisions first of all. Now Article 63 is saying that there shall be a vice president of India, right? Now under this article, it is also mentioned certain qualifications in the constitution. Now it is being said that a person to elect as a vice president of India, he should be a citizen of India. He must complete 35 years of age. He should be qualified for election as a member of Rajya Sabha, right? He should not hold any office of profit. Now these are the criteria that is given in the constitution itself. Okay. There is another thing. Now, what is the procedure for removal of the vice president? Now it is been said that to remove the vice president, a resolution has to be passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha. Now this majority is called effective majority, and it has to be agreed by the Lok Sabha. That is simple majority. Now that is what the thing. And next, this resolution can be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha and not in Lok Sabha. Now this is an important point from the police perspective. Now the resolution for removal of the vice president has to be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha and not in the Lok Sabha. Okay, and no such resolution can be moved unless at least 14 days advance notice has been given. Okay, remember. Now if at all he want to be resigned, vice president can resign from his office anytime by addressing the resignation letter to the president itself. Now vice president is eligible for re-election to that office. He may be elected for any number of times. Okay, this is also important from the plaintiff's perspective, right? Now we have to know certain facts from the perspective of the films regarding the vice president and his role. Okay, now vice president is also the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Now this is as per the article 64. Remember this article, you may be used in the mains examination. Now vice president acts as a president as per the article 165 when the vacancy occurs in the office of the president due to his resignation, impeachment, death, or otherwise. And remember that when there is a vacancy in the office of the president, vice president can only act as a president for only 6 months, within which a new president has to be appointed, right? Next, when the sitting president cannot discharge his functions due to absence, illness, or any other cause, vice president discharges his functions. Okay. Now, while discharging these functions, vice president will not act as a chairman of Rajya Sabha. That is what mentioned here. While acting as a president or discharging the functions of the president, vice president does not perform the duties of the office of chairman of Rajya Sabha. Now, during this period, those duties are performed by the deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Okay, remember this point. Now, another important thing is that though he is not a member of the House, who vice president is not a member of the House, but vice president can vote in the Rajya Sabha in case of a tie. Now, this is very important point from the president's perspective. Okay, vice president is not a member of the House, but still he can vote in the Rajya Sabha in case of a tie, as in the position of a chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay. Next, Article 66 is saying that vice president shall be elected by the members of an electoral college consisting of members of both the houses of the parliament in accordance with the system of proportional representation. Okay. Now remember this point that vice president's collegium to elect consists of members from both the houses of the parliament. Okay. Next, Article 67 saying that shall hold office for a term of 5 years. Now this is also remember. Okay. Now these are the things you have to remember from the plaintiff's perspective. Try to remember certain articles which are important so that you can use them, as a data in the mains examination GS paper 2, because the role of chairman of Rajya Sabha is being asking in the GS paper 2 repeatedly, okay, in alternative years. Now we will move to the next article. Now what this article is saying? Now this article is saying that Indians need the right to disconnect. Now what is the context of the news? The context of the news is that we often talk about productivity of the work. Now in this context, we often hear recently the comments of the influential and elite people such as Narayan Murthy of Infosys. He said that we need 70 hours week work, 70 hours work week. Now in this context, we have seen another contradiction issue that it is allegedly said that an employee of EY has been died by the suicide because of the stress or work stress and things like that. Now, this article is saying that we need to have the right to disconnect. What is meant by the right to disconnect? Now, it is being said that after working 8 to 9 hours at workplace or office, now it is being said that when the employees go to home, they will getting their text messages, calls, directions from the employees for the tomorrow's work or some other targets and things like that. Because of the which these employees are continuous anxiety, stress, performance pressure, and things like that, because of which there is a continuous stress and things like that. This is what saying. This is stealing the social leisure of the people, social leisure time, family time. Hence, this is affecting psychologically. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. So, hence, we need right to disconnect. That is, once we completed the office working hours, we need to disconnect that. It can be in the form of switching off the phone. Now, switching off the phone should not be considered as a non-disciplinary or disciplinary issue. It should not be considered as a misconduct. Now, this is what mentioned by the High Court also. Now, High Court in such a context said that if an employee is not lifting the phone, it should not be considered as a misconduct because it is beyond the working hours. Now, it is his personal time. He has his own rights. He has his own duties. Now, in this article, it is been said that India has no law to discuss or enforce this right to disconnect. There are certain countries such as Spain having these best practices that they can switch off the phone after completion of the work and things like that. Okay. Now, in India, there are certain articles which are talking about health of the workers. For example, in Article 38, it has been said that state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people. And Article 39, it is clearly mentioned that state shall take the policies in which we need to secure strength and health of the workers. This was there in Article 13 itself, 39 itself, right? Now, in another case, High Court also said that an employer should not indiscriminately humiliate or scold inhumanly the subordinates in front of other subordinates or staff members, even if there is a mistake or lapse of the rules. Now, because this is against the dignity of employee. No, this is what the thing. Hence, there are a lot of issues in the workplace. Hence, we need to ensure that work-life balance. We often talk about work-life balance and things like that. We need to have this dignified working place. Right now, many researchers are saying that because of this work pressure and all, the productivity of the employees will be reducing. Not just productivity, the health of the employees, especially now in this article itself mentioned that many researchers by the Harvard and things like that mentioned because of the psychological stress at the workplace, many people are leading to the heart diseases, not focusing on the physical health because of which lead to the obesity. Right, their family relations are also damaging because of the work life. Many of times we have seen that issues of divorce because of the work issues. No, all these things are there. In India, there is no law. In 2018, MP Supriya Sule introduced a private member bill in the Lok Sabha in order to delineate the rules regarding the right to disconnect. But later it was not passed. Now, after that, there is no such, measure right. Now, at the end, this article is saying that we need to consider, especially employers need to consider the psychological issues of the employees also for ensuring the dignity at work. Now, this is what the context. Now, you can use this article in the essay and GS paper 4 also, right? Because in GS paper 4, there is a syllabus topic called work culture, right? Okay, we can move to the next article. Now, this article is saying that Union government names Sanjay Malhotra as a RBI governor. Okay, now this is the context of the news. Now, from the examination perspective, you have to know the appointment process of the RBI governor because RBI or banking as a theme is very important, especially from the prelims perspective. Repeatedly, questions are asking. Now, if you see these previous year questions, I think this was asked in 2021. It is being said that the governor of RBI is appointed by the central government. Now, yes, the statement is true. Certain provisions in the Constitution of India gave the central government the right to issue directions to the RBI in the public interest. First of all, this is a wrong statement because it is not the constitutional provisions, rather it is the provisions of the RBI Act of 1934 that give certain rights to the central government to issue directions to the RBI in the public interest. Okay. Now, second statement wrong in this context. And next thing is the governor of the RBI draws his power from the RBI Act. Yes, this is true. Hence, option 1 and 3. Now, based on this, you can understand that the importance of the RBI or banking as a theme. Hence, we will see certain appointment procedure of the RBI governor. Okay, in this context. See, firstly, RBI governor is appointed by the central government. Central government in the sense that it is cabinet committee on appointments. This cabinet committee on appointments is chaired by the prime minister. Okay, who will be appointed by this cabinet committee on appointments? Now, first of all, RBI governor is appointed after proposal made by the financial sector and regulatory appointments committee. See, there is a search committee which is called as Financial Sector Regulatory Appointment Search Committee, in which it will take certain names. Now, based on that, it will conduct interviews, and after that, it shortlists certain names, and these certain names are provided to the Cabinet Committee on Appointments. This Cabinet Committee on Appointments will select one of them. Hence, this is how RBI governor is appointed. Okay. Next important thing is that you have to remember from the prelims perspective, this search committee, that is Financial Sector Regulator Appointment Search Committee, is headed by the Cabinet Secretary. Okay, this is one of the things you have to remember. And next, governor and deputy governors hold office for periods not exceeding 5 years. This is important from the prelims perspective. Next, this RBI governor, now a new governor is appointing, right? Now, a governor can be eligible for reappointment also, RBI governor. Okay, remember this point. Next, RBI governor tenure can be extended as well. Now, recently, before this governor, there is a governor called Shaktikant Das. His tenure was extended, I think, 2 or 3 years. Hence, this provision was used or exercised. Remember this again, important from the prelims perspective. And again, RBI Act does not mention any specific qualification criteria for appointing as a RBI governor. Okay, neither RBI nor any constitutional provision. There is no criteria mentioned regarding the qualification of RBI governor. Okay. Next important thing. Initially, RBI is privately owned. Okay. Remember this. After it was nationalized in 1949, from then Reserve Bank of India is fully owned by the government of India. Okay. Now RBI governor is also act as a ex officio chairman of Central Board of Directors. Right? Is very important again. Next, RBI governor will also be the chairman of Monetary Policy Committee. Right? These are the facts that you have to remember from the perspective of RBI governor as a thing. Right? He is the chairman of MPC. He is the chairman of Central Board of Directors. Right? He is appointed by the Cabinet Committee of Appointments. Right? Tenure is 5 years, but it can be extended. He can be reappointed. Does not have any qualification criteria mentioned because they can be from diverse backgrounds. Because in the past years, now it can be an IAS officer. For example, Shaktikant Das is an IAS officer. But in the past, there are people who are economists. There are people who are from the Indian Audit and Account Services and things like that. Okay, they are from the diverse backgrounds. There is no criteria mentioned. Okay, these are the things that you have to remember from the perspective of prelims regarding the RBI governor. Okay, UPSC has a habit of asking the questions regarding the appointments of major positions. That's all for today. Thank you.